Hello and good evening on this 6th day of December 2015. Welcome to KTN Weekend Prime. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. We're coming to you live from the KTN News Center here in Nairobi, Kenya, broadcasting to over 11 countries within the region. Welcome to the program today. We have the day's top stories for you. Obviously, all the rhetoric surrounding the Eurobond saga, as well as Checkpoint, our discussion every Sunday night. And today we're asking you the question. I've already posted this on Twitter. Who's watching the watchdogs? We've talked about corruption in the executive. The president has even talked about corruption happening within the private sector, them being the enablers. Now we're talking about corruption in a place many imagined it would never happen, and that is within the precincts of Parliament, the body that is designed to provide oversight to the executive. So we're asking you, in light of the recent scandals we've had recently, do you still trust Parliament to provide its oversight role on the executive? Please send in your feedback. The hashtag is Checkpoint. At KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara. You can also send us a quick text message. The number is 22155. Our guest later on Checkpoint, Barack Muluka, he's spoken extensively on matters corruption, and the person who's in charge of the oversight body within Parliament, which is the oversight body for the nation. That is Honorable Nicholas Gumbo, who's the chair of the Parliamentary Accounts Committee. What are your thoughts on corruption in Parliament? In case you've missed out on a number of those, I'll be enumerating them right here on the Super Bowl in just a few minutes. But let's take a look at today's top stories. Record-breaking foreign trips. Are President Uhuru Kenyatta's foreign tours a little too much?
Mr. President, take charge of tracing and recovering our Eurobond money.
Na tuko tayari kujibu maswali ya kila mtu, mkubwa ama mdogo.
Plus, who is telling the truth? The bond that is now a fiery subject in Kenya. Also coming up, gaining admiration, why Tanzania's new president is popular in Kenya. And the role of education in combating female genital mutilation. Marisha Owiti is our sign language interpreter. We welcome you to the program tonight. So let's start off from State House, which has defended President Uhuru Kenyatta's trips out of the country in what is seen as huge delegations accompanying the president. State House spokesman Manoa Esipisu says the president's trips are necessary and will continue. Esipisu says Kenyan delegations involve the country's top negotiators who play a key role in securing deals. Uhuru arrived in the country last night after a tour of 3 countries and is scheduled to leave the country yet again this Thursday. Rita Tinina begins our coverage tonight.
At the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport shortly after midnight, President Uhuru Kenyatta jets back into the country from South Africa, where he attended the Forum for China-Africa Cooperation. He went to South Africa from France, where he joined at least 150 other heads of state for the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Paris. He went to France from Malta, where he attended the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. At the airport, he was received by senior government officials. But on social media, Uhuru got a different kind of welcome from some who feel that the president is traveling too much and is in the country only for a visit. On Twitter, the hashtag Uhuru in Kenya was trending for the better part of the day on Sunday. But State House defended Uhuru's travels, saying the president has to do what the president has to do.
The president has to undertake what is necessary travel.
The president, who left the country hours after Pope Francis left on the 27th of November, will in just 3 days head to Rwanda for the Northern Corridor meeting.
We cannot claim the leadership position we have in the region and yet shun our obligations to deal with the regional issues that we need to deal with.
Uhuru is said to have made 43 foreign trips in the just over 950 days he has been in office, compared to 33 foreign trips made by his predecessor Mwai Kibaki during his decade in power. But it is not just the frequency of Uhuru's travels that has some concerned. The size of his delegations too is raising eyebrows. For the COP21 meeting in France, Uhuru was accompanied by a delegation of more than 36 people. State House will not deny or confirm the numbers, only justifying why the country sends such huge delegations.
I think it would be folly to send 2 lawyers to COP21 when the United States has 150 lawyers to secure its commitments to the agreement. We would just never be able to play in that league. We've got to get our experts out there, and we have to do so.
State House says many of the meetings the president attends are negotiating forums, and Kenya has to send its top negotiators to secure the best deals. In South Africa, Kenya secured 1.5 billion shillings from China for the construction of the Nairobi-Naivasha phase of the standard gauge railway, 4.5 billion shillings for a conference facility in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and 1,000 university scholarships.
But if we take securing financing for just this Nairobi-Naivasha line, that's 1.5 billion. Assess the investment gone to having this thing discussed in Johannesburg, and you'll see that the cost really is nothing compared to the result.
In fact, State House says the president's foreign trips and large delegations have in 2 years has never realized since independence.
The foreign direct inflows into Kenya are also significantly higher during this presidency so far than there has ever been.
For Kenyans who see the president as a frequent traveler with huge delegations, it may take more than just a statement from State House to convince them that the frequent travels come with huge benefits for the country. For now, though, the president's travels outside the country continue. Next stop, Kigali, Rwanda. Rita Tinina, KTN News.
Indeed, and Rita has enumerated those trips that the president has made: Malta, France, South Africa, and he's heading next to Kigali, Rwanda. That's a little later on in this week. So let's talk a little bit about the goodies, and this is from the statement that was given earlier today by the spokesperson Manoa Esipisu. The 1.5 billion shillings that Rita Tinina has mentioned in her story is for an industrial park in Naivasha that will be using steam power for the manufacture of well-priced commodities. This is supposed to provide some 25,000 jobs in the fields of engineering who will be hired for the project, 15,000 local skilled workers, and 400 engineers who are being mentored for that. Amongst other statements that were made today regarding the president's trips, it was also about a state-of-the-art conference facility that they say is lacking in the country, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs will get that, and this has been offered by the government of China, of course, at the cost of 300 million renminbi, that's 4.5 billion shillings. Also in the field of education, 1,000 university scholarships for those Kenyans who might want to study in China. Another goodie that the government says has come from the president's 43 trips abroad. There's also been some progress on a joint laboratory for crop molecular biology at the Egerton University that is central to some of the new agricultural initiatives that China and Africa are considering. Now I want to go through the next ones pretty fast because they're quite detailed. In the field of energy, the government says there have been a number of those ones. There's a 108-kilometer Nyahururu-Maralal transmission line and substations, as well in Lamu, Lokichogio. We also move on to the Takwel, Lodwa, and Rangala, Busia. There's a double circuit and substation as well. So talking about quite a number of issues that are happening within the energy sector, which they say is key to Kenya's industrial growth in Meru and Maua as well. And those are not the only areas the government is claiming success in. These, remember, these deals have either been signed, been concluded, or are in the process of doing so. Garissa, Burahola, as well as in Menengai and Rongai. Also, some undergrounding and insulation of the overhead network in Mombasa and Kisumu, as well as an underground distribution network in the capital, Nairobi. 41 new distribution substations in the western region, as well as Nakuru Business District. Some underground cabling that will be happening there. Industrial area and Upper Hill, Nairobi, which they say is key to Kenya's manufacturing sector. Also in parts of the city, that is Kileleshwa, Westlands, Parklands, Ngara, Riverside, and some of the surrounding areas there as well. So these are some of the energy deals which, according to Manoa Sipisu, and I quote, he says, electricity vital for industrialization and economic growth. These are deals that are still ongoing in Dagoretti and in Karen as well. The president says we'll be heading to Rwanda in the next few. How much money has been spent on that? Some people putting it at 15 billion shillings. Is it worth it? From these statements that have been released by the presidency, we will wait and see what happens even as the president heads back out into Rwanda later this week. Now, Court leader Raila Odinga is urging President Uhuru Kenyatta to intervene and take charge in tracing funds raised from the Eurobond. Addressing a news conference in Kisumu City today, Odinga said, as the chief executive of the nation, the president is constitutionally bound to protect the interests of Kenyans. He says his efforts to engage the treasury on the matter have only resulted in Kenyans getting conflicting answers, but now wants President Kenyatta to order the investigations into the matter. But in a quick rejoinder, Jubilee leaders led by Deputy President William Ruto say Raila's refusal of the explanation of how the Eurobond was spent is a clear indication that the former Prime Minister is using the subject to gain political mileage.
He should have raised even more questions about the veracity of the Treasury's accounting of how the entire Eurobond monies were handled. We are forced, like the majority of Kenyans, to conclude that this money, at the very least, US $1.4 billion, or 140 billion shillings, is, to put it mildly, missing. We would like to emphasize that this is not currently about catching culprits, but about Kenya's place as a serious member of the community of nations, able to transact economically in a manner that benefits its citizens while meeting global expectations and standards.
Badala ya hawa wangwana kwenda kule kwa Eurobond ama kwenda kwa EACC waseme hiyo story yao, wakaenda kwa street kwenda kutangaza porojo na mambo ya gossip na rumors.
Raila Amolo Odinga namuuliza anaelewa kwamba Eurobond ni nini? Kila saa anasema pesa ya Eurobond kwanza aende asomeshwe, aambiwe Eurobond ni nini, aelewe kwanza, ndio tukimwambia hakuna pesa imepotea, ajue ya kwamba hakuna pesa imepotea. Na be fair. Abana uliza swali sahihi kwa sababu ati unafikiri ya kwamba hiyo swali itakusaidia katika mahitaji yako ya kisiasa. The opposition is very quick to ask the government questions about corruption. But whenever issues of corruption are raised within the opposition ranks, they go mute. Sasa wewe kama unauliza hiyo maswali yako, mbona uulizi maswali ya sigara ile imetajwa hapa? Mbona uulizi maswali ya zile embassy zetu zilipotea?
Allegations of corruption surrounding the nation at the moment. We'll be speaking about corruption in the legislature in just a moment on Checkpoint. Please keep your comments coming. The hashtag we're using is Checkpoint. But across the pond, things are a little different. What would Magufuli do? Well, it has been a trending topic over the last few days that has now taken a comical turn, but one that describes Tanzanian President John Magufuli's style of curbing wastage of government resources. And as Zinzi Kibiku now reports, the Magufuli leadership is also gaining admiration across the region.
The hashtag, "What would Magufuli do?" has been trending on Twitter this past week. The new Tanzanian president, John Pombe Magufuli, has hit the ground running and made some changes, some of which have been to curb expenditure. The result is a series of hilarious Magufuli-themed memes on Twitter. For example, Magufuli would fry eggs on a spade instead of buying a frying pan, reuse toothpaste multiple times, turn a wheelbarrow into a limo for his wedding day, and so forth.
Is this a political stunt, or will he continue to do this as time goes on? Because as we're speaking, it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's 23 days since he took office, so it's about 3 weeks. So will he go with the same pace as which he started with?
I think it's a welcome change. I think if anything, we would hope that he continues in the same way. And that he just ensures that, you know, at the same time as he makes all these decisions, because the president in Tanzania does have a lot of power, that he observes the rule of law and that he doesn't forget to uphold people's human rights while he's at it.
These memes should obviously be taken with a sense of humor, as they are meant to be funny, but the principles coming out of both the tweets and his actions are quite useful.
If you look at the kind of actions that Magufuli has taken, small steps, small actions that have endeared him to the Tanzanian public, small actions that have shown every citizen that here is a serious president.
Back here, civil societies are now using the Magufuli style to ask our very own president to emulate the newly elected Tanzanian leader.
And we are asking whether it's not possible for the president to learn from what President Magufuli of Tanzania is doing.
At the end of the day, it is really about considering alternatives before you spend money. What Magufuli has been seen to already do in his few days in office is curb wastage. We can do that with our own expenses.
There is a famous quote that says leadership is not a position or a title, it is action and example. And for Kenyan politicians, their actions speaks a volume about their interest for Kenya. Zinzi Kibiku, KTN News, Nairobi.
All right, keep following that hashtag. What would Magufuli do, to see what comes up next? Let's focus a little bit on what's going on in Paris. And the Paris climate change enters yet another crucial stage as the ministerial session takes center stage tomorrow. Today, African ministers of environment held a strategy meeting. We're now joined live by a special correspondent from Paris, Alex Chamwada. Alex, do we know what...
Actually, at the meeting of the African Group of Negotiators, and remember, the chair of the African Group of Negotiators is South Sudan, they were getting a brief on what its latest, as far as the draft document that was released yesterday is concerned. So that group was meeting the African ministers in charge of environment and related fields. And so far, what we are gathering is that nothing tangible yet. And remember yesterday when I had a one-on-one with the Cabinet Secretary for Environment and Natural Resources, Professor Judy Wakungu, she said, quote, that there were many brackets, meaning they were yet to reach any tangible conclusions. The feeling is that the spirit exhibited by the heads of state and government at the opening of this conference is not being carried forward to the negotiating tables. I know there are many aspects that are being discussed where agreement has to be reached on, from food security issues, issues of forests, issues of adaptation and financing. So they feel that the document is not yet, reflecting the spirit of the heads of state and government, Yvonne.
Sticky points, obviously, even as the conference continues and enters this critical stage. Could you tell us about some of those?
Yeah, speaking about the sticking points, Yvonne, the developing nations are looking for three issues. One, financing, that because they are not quite responsible for the global warming, that they should be compensated, that there should be more resources pumped into their countries, into their nations, to enable their people to handle the consequences of global warming, which goes to, trickles down to, areas like farming, how to enhance capacity building, use of green energy for their people to be able to, to adapt to the consequences of global warming. The other sticking issues, of course, are issues to do with gender, human rights and equality, that there are some nations where now for them that doesn't apply really. And then there is the issue of what is called differentiation. Here, for example, who is a developed country, what's the role of the developed countries, the industrialized countries versus developing countries? And then there are those that fall under least developed countries. So if there is any assistance going to least developed countries, that kind of categorization is quite a sticky issue here. Who falls where? And of course, when you talk about those countries or nations that are responsible for the global warming, there are those in the middle, for example, China and India. So those are some of the issues that will be discussed when the ministerial conference begins tomorrow. They'll be scrutinizing what is called the text of the document, with the hope that maybe they will agree before the 11th and have a document that is legally binding. Yvonne.
Absolutely. Alex Chamada, thank you very much for that. He's our special correspondent here covering COP21 in Paris. Will a deal be reached before the end of that conference? Obviously, the ultimate stage is when we're discussing what the ministers will have to say. Thanks very much, Alex Chamada, for that. Now, 16 days of activism against gender-based violence ends on the 10th of December, the same month that local authorities in Elgeyo Marakwet County have to be on high alert so as to fight female genital mutilation that is rampant every end of the year. Mercy Kandia was in Elgeyo Marakwet and explores the role of education.
The tree provides the perfect shade for the class to go on as scheduled just before the December holiday.
So well done! Well done! Well done!
In the hot Kerio Valley at Cheptarit Primary School, a thirst is being quenched. The thirst to have a better life, for the girl child especially. Female genital mutilation can get rampant during the December holidays. Education is one of the ways to fight the vice. These young ones too eager to learn. The cows grazing nearby are no disruption as they raise their hands to answer the teacher's questions. It's in school that they get to learn their rights.
We make sure school run is constant. We don't want to see any child who is at home during school days. And if there is any, then those representatives come to my office and tell me that somebody is at home with a school girl or child.
A report done by the Women's Rights Institute for Peace in 2012 revealed the change of circumcision season from December to August to avoid media spotlight and scrutiny by government agencies. The local administration in Elgeyo Marakwet County know that they have to put up measures as the holidays approach.
We have to fight cultural issues, and again we have to fight political issues.
The first week of December 2015 saw the arrest of 4 people, among them an assistant chief, for subjecting their daughters to the outlawed FGM in Marakwet East sub-county. 1 year ago in Bugar village, Keyo North, we highlighted the story of 7 married women who were arrested for undergoing FGM.
Nikitembea hata hii masherehe wengine wananitusi, wananitupa nje. Sasa naona ni vibaya vile nilisikia kuna vile wanafanyia hawa, mimi tu niliamua peke yangu, hakuna mwenye alinilazimisha.
Masherehe watu wanavuguza watu, hata nyinyi ni watoto.
An emerging trend that has shocked local administration and those who are advocating against the vice. The women were later on released on the grounds that they were forced to get the cut by their husbands.
The phenomenon now we are grappling with is about married women who are voluntarily going into this practice of the cut. Of course, looking at it from the side of law enforcement, of course it is an illegality. It is there in law. But what triggers this? This is an issue that we are trying to get to the bottom of it.
Christian-sponsored schools in the valleys play a big role, but are also facing resistance as the teachings of the Bible are also viewed as the introduction of a new culture.
This is a region where we experience a lot of gender-based violence, but because of faith, the word of God and the faith leaders, they have played a big role in curbing the gender-based violences and especially FGM.
At this school in the valley, the motto is education is life, guard it well. What resonates with many here, life, a good life, free of such vices. What vision and goals they have seen through their eyes.
I like education because without education, your future will not become good.
The FGM is not common in this place, but the education of girls, like this school, there are more girls than boys.
The local administration in Elgeyo County says it has thwarted efforts to circumcise hundreds of girls in Kipkaner, Tangul, Boroko, Mumwa and Kipchumwa villages. In 2014 alone, 31 girls were forcefully circumcised in Chungor sublocation, with members of the public threatening to lynch police officers who had gone to the village to rescue the minors.
That in the gender project that I coordinate, being supported by UNFPA, it cuts across the county, Elgeyo County, and we have cases of FGM, mainly in the lower part of Marakwet East and the lower part of Marakwet West. And our efforts are concentrated there. We have dialogue meetings to understand the social norms that are affecting and probably that have been fueling these issues, despite the many interventions that are in place.
25th November to 10th December 2015 marks the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women. 16 days of activism against gender-based violence campaign, and as the worldwide campaign goes on, in the valley, that campaign is slowly being realized, one lesson at a time.
Since the prohibition of the female genital mutilation by law by the Kenyan government back in 2011, a lot of steps have been made to eradicate this outdated practice. But now a lot more needs to be done to eradicate fully the emerging trends of married women now facing the cut. Marcy Kandia, KTN News, Elgeyo County.
All right, so more than 20 members of National Assembly from that committee who went on a benchmarking tour, the catering committee, that enraged Kenyans and turned the spotlight on corruption within the legislature, that is Parliament. Now, this is from an Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission report that was handed over to the Speaker. In fact, it was the Speaker who asked them to come in and take a look at the processes within the National Assembly. So if you are enraged by that trip, well, let's take a look at what else is happening within the National Assembly, and this is what forms the basis of our discussion in just a few short minutes on Checkpoint. Now, it has emerged that MPs are colluding with each other to sign attendance lists for their absent colleagues. Allowances. Now, mileage allowances is the next biggest cash cow. Members of Parliament get 187 shillings per kilometre, ostensibly to allow them to go back to their constituencies every weekend or so to be able to interact with the legislature. So this is what's coming up, that an MP who remains unnamed in that report claimed mileage allowance for visiting his constituency, while at the same time he was actually in Australia for a trip that was sponsored once again by Parliament for 6 days. This took place in August last year. Now, some of the mileage claims are ridiculous. Claims are made even when there is no verification that the MP did in fact go home to his constituency. Some of them take planes, which are cheaper, but still claim mileage for having taken a trip by road. Some of them make mileage claims even when Parliament is not in session, and therefore it is assumed they should be at home in their constituencies. Now, the Controller of Budget has talked about the domestic travel expenditure for Parliament being at 13.3 billion shillings for the first half of the financial year 2013-2014. 1.4 billion shillings spent in mileage claims. This is by the National Assembly. Another big one that came out of the EACC report is that the authenticity of the payroll is in question. In fact, some former members of Parliament are still earning money under unclear circumstances, and this is what they say investigations will be done to find out just who these are. Here's another one. Parliamentary committee chairpersons getting paid a responsibility allowance of 150,000 shillings a month and still claim 10,000 shillings per sitting. We have one of those who is with us on Checkpoint. We'll be asking him about that in just a moment. Let's put this into perspective. Members of Parliament earn about 1 million shillings as salary plus allowances. They get a 5 million shilling car grant, at least they did in 2013, and a mortgage of 20 million shillings. Now, it has emerged again from that Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission report that some members of Parliament from the last House left without paying back their loans. What is going on within the body that is set to oversight the executive, and can we trust them now? The question is what we're asking a little later on Checkpoint after this short break. Keep your comments coming in. The hashtag is Checkpoint, at KTN News, at Yvonne Okwara. Michael Otieno won this year's edition of Mr. Modern Fitness competition that saw competitors from the East Africa region take part. Otieno, who is the reigning Mr. Kenya, pocketed 250,000 shillings. In the ladies category, Shital Kotak beat 6 other contestants to emerge the winner.
Mombasa County was lit up as bodybuilders drawn from the East Africa region gathered to outmuscle each other in the Mr. Modern Fitness competition. With 250,000 Kenya shillings as the prize money for the winner, the competitors were quick to show their packed muscles as the battle to walk home richer intensified. Reigning Mr. Kenya Michael Otieno, however, seemed to draw the crowds to his favor. With all the athletes having to go through routine long poses in order to sway the judges, the Mombasa-based Otieno managed to impress the judges with his physique, walking away with 250 Kenya shillings.
I can see a lot of improvement in this game, and it's a new beginning for bodybuilding. For me, I've been competing for the last 15 years, but what I'm seeing now is not the kind of game we were doing some times back. For me, this is a new beginning in bodybuilding history, and I would urge all those who are interested in bodybuilding, because it's a sport like any other sport, to come together so that we can make this sport prosper and we help other youths.
Kericho-based Paul Mwangale finished in second place, pocketing 100,000 Kenya shillings, while Rashid Issa came in third ahead of Uganda Lamed Mwanga, who took the fourth position, beating Hassan Juma from Kisii and Kizito Mbarak from Uganda, who emerged the fifth and sixth best in the overall category, respectively. In the ladies category, 35-year-old Shital Kotak made history by becoming the first lady to win 3 consecutive local bodybuilding competitions, having won previously in 2013 and 2014. Shital bagged 40,000 Kenya shillings, defeating 6 other contestants. Robinson Okenye, KTN Sports.
The battle for the title intensifies as the Kenya Basketball Federation League playoffs enter the final stages. In the second semi-final played in Mombasa, Ulinzi edged out KPA 68-61 to put one foot in the finals.
After losing their first match of the semi-final in the Kenya Basketball Playoffs, defending champions KPA were out to level matters in the series, but their opponents Ulinzi were not willing to let their lead slip in the quest for this year's crown. From the team, it was an end-to-end match with each team registering 11 points within the first 5 minutes. Ulinzi, however, had more armor in the artillery to open a 2-point gap going into the second quarter. KPA were not willing to be humiliated in front of their home fans as they began on a bright note after the break. Warriors, however, defended their lead well as they left KPA trailing by 9 points at the break. Ulinzi ran riot in the third quarter with Eric Mutoro in the thick of the action as they extended their lead to 61 to 49 points. The fourth quarter saw KPA almost manage a comeback, steered by Evans Leting, who scored a total of 19 points, but Ulinzi held on to an 87-81 victory. The win leaves KPA facing elimination if they do not win their next match. Abul Ahmed, KTN Sports.
Thomas James is the winner of this year's men's Safaricom Imenti South Road race after clocking 49 minutes, 49.06 seconds. An impressive Pauline Njeru was outstanding in the ladies' race, bagging the victory after 58 minutes, 37.08 seconds. Thomas James secured the men's victory ahead of second-placed Maurice Monene, who crossed the finish line after 49 minutes, 49 seconds. Samuel Maniki came home third, while Katika Nafasia Tatu Patrick Mutunga settled for the fourth position. In the ladies' affair, Pauline emerged victorious ahead of second-placed Nancy Nzisa, who clocked 58 minutes, 31.07 seconds. Eunice Kioko and Jacqueline Chepngeno took the third and fourth slots, respectively.
Kwa hii mbio kutoka starting nilienda na wanaume wakaenda wakikatika, ninasukua mwingine naendaenda na yeye mpaka nika maintain.
Okay, it was very tough, but I was just first of all in the first kilometers. I wanted to stay behind the people, and then because I came to rise at the climbing, they are not so strong, so I just used the tactic of the climbing.
All right, we've come to the end of the show now, so we would like to sample some of your feedback today. Frederick Okango says, why would an MP claim mileage while he is not employed and earning? What would Magufuli do? Nahashan 87 says, everyone wants corruption to end, but no one is willing to suffer while trying to end it. You'll pay a bribe to get that service. Edward 638, you say sitting allowance at committee, house responsibility and salary. That's why people leave their passion jobs to become members of parliament. Thanks for watching Checkpoint and indeed the Bulletin tonight. We thank you very much for your feedback. As always, I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. I'll be taking a quick break this year, so we will see you again next year. So Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, look after yourselves. Tutaonana baadaye. God bless you all. I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. Once again, good night.